Hello and welcome back to the Fairbanks Year-Round Podcast. Today I am joined by a special guest, Mrs. Carrie Narow with Back to Glass. Did I get that all right?
You got it.
All right, perfect. So, I always like to start out, as we've previously spoke, how did you make it to the area?
So my dad used to work for IBM in
okay.
Coos Bay, Oregon, and they transferred him up here, and he used to work on all the checkouts at Safeway, and he used to fly back and forth to Barrow week on, week off. And so that's what brought us up here, just something new, something different. And he was very IT guy.
Okay.
Yeah, he's always very much so IT guy and crafty.
Maintaining those. Okay. Yeah. IBM, that's the big one.
The big one, yeah.
So pretty early on.
Kind of crazy. 1984, and Mom also had a print shop at the time.
Oh, okay.
She was running Polar Run Printing in Oregon and brought it all up with her. I don't actually know if it was called that down there because it sounds very Alaskan.
Right.
Polar Run Printing, right?
Yeah,
but she ran that in the backyard my whole childhood.
Oh,
and
that's
eventually
awesome.
bought Dragon Press out of Delta and continued to run Yukon Quest posters. Gotcha. It was way back in the day.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I grew up with. Dad leaving town and IBM and Mom running the print shop. So I always had like the stay-at-home mom. Same thing I've been doing all this time too. So
Right. So do you think that's maybe, because we're going to get into the business side, do you think that's where the business acumen or that drive came from? Or
I guess so. They were just always doing, building, making, always.
Yeah.
So that might have been it.
So, and you've stayed here. Did you have everyone has a stint where they move away for a little bit? Or
we did too. That's funny. We moved to Hawaii for 5 years.
Hey, that's
My husband
wonderful.
got really tired of the winters.
Yeah.
And was just like young enough at the time to think we could just do this.
Yeah.
And I had a 2-month-old and a 2-year-old at the time. I did not want to go.
Yeah. Yeah.
My mom actually traveled with us.
Oh, okay.
And she came to visit us 9 times while we were over there.
Oh, wow.
And then we finally moved back to take care of family. So
Gotcha.
But it was a nice stint. We're definitely always a little Alaskan, a little Hawaiian.
Yeah, they're like sister states at this point because I feel like everyone just goes down there at least in January to get away.
Right, we're still wondering, what are we doing in January, February?
Yeah, absolutely. So are you, do you miss Hawaii or is it?
I do.
Yeah.
But we went a couple years ago and it was pretty crazy busy. And I really, as I've gotten older, realized I don't do well with busy.
Yeah.
I just need smaller crowds.
What island were you
It was
on?
Oahu, the busy island we call it.
Yeah.
And we were in Waimanalo at a friend's beach house, which was amazing. So anytime we need to leave, I'm like, I'm fine right here. I don't need to go anywhere. I'm good. I'm like right by the beach.
That's awesome. Yeah, I wish I had a friend went to the beach house on Oahu. That's wonderful.
It was a nice treat, but you got to remember it's not like that when you move. You know, like you don't always get that location, and then you've got to drive to work, and it's very busy with the roads, just like living, in the States, it's very busy. So
yeah, just speaking of January, going to Hawaii, just this past January, I was in Oahu, and I was, I don't know if it's like an age thing or what, but I'm way more stressed around a lot of people, and there's always the traffic, of course, but it just feels like I'm always being watched or something. I don't know if that's the feeling. So when I got home, I was like, and I'm a bad vacationer anyways. My wife will tell you. It's like, I'm pretty bad at just like laying on the beach. But when I got home, I was like, oh, so glad to be back. It's just like too much for me down there. And I like Hawaii. I'm not against it or anything, but well, glad to have you back here.
Thanks.
So let's get into, what's the progression, I guess, that got you to this business now, Back to Glass?
Even when we lived over there, because like if I go back far enough, my parents have always done glass. And my dad started with stained glass, and Mom was fusing wine bottles. And I remember making this lampshade. He only did it one time because it's a lot of work. It's still in Mom's house, matches nothing. It's still there. Yeah. And then he built the building my mom lives in, built the garage that we live above, and so along with all that, he was always doing something with fusing glass or beadworking or stained glass, right? Just all throughout my childhood. So I just kind of dabbled with it forever. Yeah. And even when we lived in Hawaii, I ended up buying a kiln from the Big Island and fired stuff in my kitchen and did the little bazaars with just little stuff. Yeah. And so, even with kids, it was just a little bit, just dabbling, like with little, simple, not complicated stuff, really easy to figure out programs and things like that, right? Not very scientific or anything. Yeah. And then have always just kept at it. Yeah. Honestly, I've just always kept at it and just kind of grew and grew. Yeah. And then I had my whole setup in the garage, and finally I could tell my husband needed a space too. And I'm like, all right, you're encroaching on my space. I'm going to move to Mom's. So my studio is actually downstairs in my mom's house, and we do glass together. Oh, hers is just a different kind than mine.
Right.
And then my husband has the whole backside of the garage, which he's, into 3D printing and lasering and engraving and all that, which is helping me too. So like he can create things to help me with my products, which is really kind of fun. And we're just getting into it.
Yeah. So you can kind of bring all those things together to make
that's the plan.
bigger.
He's been making me squares, like speed squares. So everybody in my class is going to have a little speed square for cutting out things, those kind of things. And instead of going and buying one, he's like, I need to use up this filament. So he'll make me speed squares.
And I am, not to get on a tangent here, but the 3D printing, I was like the first time I heard of it, I must have been in high school, whatever that's been, 12-ish, 14 years ago.
Yeah.
And I thought, this is the future. And it's still kind of in that, like, I still feel like it's the future in some way, but it's not caught on. I mean, I don't know. That's not true. It's a pretty big deal. A lot of people have 3D printers.
I don't know.
I don't know. It's a really cool idea.
I think it's a fun, like, little hobby for creating things, but I don't know how awesome it is on, like, a grand scale. Only because I just can only see so far with it.
I know.
For now.
That's what I'm, like, that's where it's kind of feel like it's got stuck. Because at first I was like, I thought of all kinds of applications. I was like, listen, Napa, they don't have any stock. They've got a printer in the back that can print metal or whatever. This was in my head. It's like, hey, you go in, it's like, hey, I need this car part. They're like, come back tomorrow, it'll be here for you.
Yeah, if it was metal, but it's not 3D printing with metal, right? So
well, you can 3D print metal, but it's it's pretty, at this point, as far as I know, pretty expensive. Like you'd have to have like quite the machine to do that. But and again, at the time I was just like thinking way in the future, and I don't know if that will ever come, but I was like sold. I wish I'd invested in some way. I don't know if I would have made any money. I still like them, but yeah, it has become more of like this hobbyist and really cool for a lot of things like prototyping and whatnot.
Oh,
like
for sure.
Use that all the time. Like, hey, I want to make this thing out of metal.
Yes.
Let me use this filament, make sure all the things are going to, match up correctly.
Yes.
And much quicker and cheaper than.
Right. Yeah. The first thing my husband made with it was a part for my husband's, my boyfriend.
Wow.
Wow. The first thing he made was a part for my brother's four-wheeler.
Oh, okay.
And it worked awesome, but it was like the first thing he actually got asked to do.
Yeah.
So that was really cool. He's like, okay, now I'm going to play with this. He's actually down there all the time building things now.
Yeah.
And like just learning and making his own little trash hoppers for it and just all this stuff.
Yeah.
It's all very techie and cool looking down there now.
That's awesome,
and last winter was the first winter that he actually didn't feel like he needed to get out. I had a foot surgery. He didn't complain about the winter at all.
Oh, nice.
So I think he's finally gotten into some hobbies that he's really enjoying and actually like is short on time.
Yeah.
Because he really wants to learn more.
Yeah.
Which is great to be in that spot, Like I still want to get out in the middle of the winter, like January, February for a little bit, but I'm really glad he's happy because I've always had my things. I've always had my hobbies, like waiting for him to pick up some,
Yeah, that's how me and my wife are in the reverse, where I've got hobbies as well, just like you. And then she's generally, I was kind of making fun of her and she's like, I have hobbies. I like to read. I do art. I was like, when's the last time you painted something? She's like, well, I know how. Yeah. You have to do it for it to be a hobby. But it's funny. True. Yeah. And she has a harder time in the winter as well. And it's a lot of things. Like I don't mind the cold and she, like the dark doesn't bother me or anything.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about this more and more because I'm like consistently, real estate sales, I'm always selling real estate, of course, but I'm consistently trying to sell my family on moving back up here.
Okay.
And so I'm just like naming off all these things. But when you talk about Fairbanks and of course doing this podcast, we bring in a bunch of cool people and they've done all these cool things. And you're like, oh yeah, there's hunting, there's glasswork, there's all these like big items that people think of when they think of Fairbanks or Alaska. And those are like cool and those are legitimate reasons to live here. But I was kind of looking at my life and I was like, I don't do like a lot of those things. Like I hunt every now and again or whatever. I was like, you just have to kind of know if you're going to enjoy like just the normal day stuff. Like I love it when it snows and I don't mind the dark. And it's kind of like, just like every day I enjoy being here. As like I was saying, when I went to Hawaii, I was like, yeah, it was fun. But I was also kind of had this like background stress that never went away the whole time I was there, Right. So I guess finding that like point where you can get cradled into the community and feel kind of comfortable.
Right. I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So good for him that he's got some hobbies going though.
Yeah. No, I'm thrilled. And I like that they can sort of integrate into mine.
Yes.
Like he's showing me things and I'm like, well, wait a minute here. What can you make me?
Yeah. Yeah.
Now and then he started to, which is cool.
You can make a lampshade out of glass and 3D printing that doesn't match anything in your house.
Boy, maybe, but I'm not going to do that. Sounds hard.
My mom, it reminded me, she had this, I believe it was Tiffany's lampshade that was like the broken glass or whatever. And oh my gosh, it was like anytime we were roughhousing or anything, she's like, we could be across the house. She's like, don't knock into my shade. And it's like, we're not even by the shade, Mom.
Right.
I'm not sure if she still has it or not, but that was kind of hilarious.
Yeah.
It must have been expensive at the time.
Must have been.
Yeah.
A lot of time goes into those.
So what is back to glass?
Back to glass is just like the name itself was just me constantly coming back to it, even through kids, like my whole life. Right.
Oh, okay.
And so the name, I'm super happy with it at this point.
Yeah.
And I'm really just playing and learning. And I'm still just barely learning. Like most of my time I spend trying to come up with things that I could teach, so that because I need examples of things and make sure that they're going to be flawless in the kiln. So when people come in and make something, I know for sure it's going to work for them, right?
Right.
And so I would say that 90% of my main drive right now is just to make those things. Maybe just to get those set up through December would be my current goal.
Okay.
And then I'd really like to start kind of getting out of the box. I'm really just self-taught. So I've taken just a few classes, and the only lady really that I could take classes from is in Washington. And she's been working with window glass like I do for 20 plus years. And she's a wealth of knowledge. And I'd love to go down and see her and just like spend a day with her, taking notes. I don't need to fire anything. Just let me take notes, look around, ask questions. Because I feel like I'm at that point of like slower learning because you're learning yourself, or trying to research as much as you can. And window glass for fusing window glass isn't readily well known. It's really not very, very common. I would say in these last few years, you can find things on Pinterest now, just a little bit, and you can find a couple websites online. So there's a little bit out there for me to go on, but a lot of it's just like trial and error, me testing and learning and playing with the heat and the cooling and the glass and things. And I'd really like to do some layers and some thickness. That's all, you have to keep the glass all the same temperature and the kiln shelf and everything the whole time. So there's a lot to it in that sense. And I haven't really delved into that as much as I'd like because I'm still trying just to make things that people can also make because they're really enjoying it and dabbling in this craft that's very unique. Really, you're using glass powders and broken up glass and frit, and it all gets to melt together and change colors in the kiln.
So let's kind of back out a little. So what would because there's a ton of different glass art work that we spoke a little bit about this, but what specifically, when you're saying like window glass and all that, what do you mean by that?
So I use a kiln, so flat surface fusing in a kiln. And so generally everything's on a flat surface, or I can use different materials to create shapes and slumping and draping and things like that, like bowls and platters and things.
Oh, okay.
And or just texture. Texture is really fun. And then I use glass powder. So say I take a sheet of window glass, like 1/8-inch window glass, and I powder it with glass powder. It's the same molecular size as the window glass. The powder and the glass is the same size, right? The same coefficiency is what it's called.
Okay.
So, and that matters because when glass heats, it expands, and when it cools, it shrinks, and it needs to do that within the same rate, this little small range.
So if you had variations, even if it worked together when it was heated up, it would cool and maybe crack.
Right, exactly. Either in the kiln or after or some other time during its life, it can crack. So you never want to mix the coefficiencies. So
how do you, is it just like labeled?
Yeah, it is. You can buy things specifically. So like mine's like 82, Mom's is 96. There's also 90. If you do fuse glass, you get familiar with those words and those numbers. And so if I mix Mom's 96, which is a standard coefficiency fusible glass, you'll see it in all kinds of art galleries, anything like from plates and just in general art that's full color, like a piece of glass that's full colored through. That is a art glass, like a fusible art glass, and you buy it like that. You could buy it by the sheet like that, and all these different massive amounts of colors. And in my case, I buy glass powders that I put on the window glass.
Okay.
Like I sift it on there, I put it in my kiln, and I fire it to like 1500 degrees. And then after like 20 hours or so, because it's got to cool down. Yeah. I take it out, and I've got a colored sheet of glass.
Oh, I see.
And then I also use like stencils on top of that and add like another color.
When in the powder's called the frit, right? Is that
the powder's just called powder in this case, but then it goes up from there to different sizes.
Oh, I see.
And then you've got like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever size you're going for.
Oh, okay.
So you can buy the frit in different sizes.
I see.
If you're lucky, I tend to just get like 4.
Gotcha.
You don't actually, unless maybe you're a distributor of it, you can get access to other numbers. But it's kind of hard to get all the numbers you want, and they're coming from Germany. So I'm not a distributor of that product. That's where I go to Washington and get it. That's the only place in the United States that I can find it. So yeah, I tend to use like frit number 4 and powders. And then I take that colored sheet of glass that I make,
Mm-hmm.
and I either hammer it into smaller pieces that I call chunks generally, and they're all across my wall in the studio of all these sizes that I've sifted down. So you use these little pieces, and you don't need any tools to create whatever design, along with the little frit pieces that are solid color to create your designs, and then we put those in the kiln. And you're either working on the front of the glass or the back of the glass, or you're using glass powders and other materials to create impressions onto the glass. So there's lots of different techniques.
Right.
So if you look at my workshops, you'll see different workshops, and they usually use different techniques to create different final products.
So when you're doing the color powder to back up to that,
Yeah.
and are you changing? You're saying like all the way through? It's changing
No,
the
just
color?
on one layer.
One layer.
One
Okay.
layer, yeah.
Okay.
And so if I tried to grind it up, like I could grind my mom's glass that's full color all the way through, I can grind her glass, and I could take like all the shades of yellows, which is awesome, and grind them all in my grain grinder, sift them all down, and she'd have all these little trays of different size frit
Yeah.
that she uses to make her little plant sticks and stuff, right? But I can't do that with mine because it's mostly clear. It ends up being like a bunch of crap because it's just clear.
I gotcha.
With a little bit of color on top, right?
Right.
So but like it looks beautiful when it's broken in pieces, hammered, or if you use tools and you nip it and cut it into different shapes. So we do a lot of that, especially with the glass I make that has stencils on it.
Right.
So you can do birch trees all across the top and like a green background and gold trees, and then you cut those pieces into other things, and that looks like really, really pretty and unique. And you can layer all these pieces on your glass and things like that. So
there's something about any of these deals. So I'm drawn to like woodworking, we'll say.
Yeah.
And when there's like a nice piece, we'll just say like mahogany or like cherry,
Yes.
and you touch it and it's smooth and it's got the sharp edge because it's been milled right and all that.
Yes.
Do you have that same like tactile when you're like
Yes.
working with your glass?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, very much so. Especially like if you make something so pretty, you're like,
Yeah.
oh, I don't really want to cut this. I'm just going to put this in my window, like it's just going to be what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. I don't ever get tired of it. I mean, I've been doing it for so long and there's still so much to learn. And it's always so interesting seeing the glass like flow, like turn to a liquid, then turn back to a solid,
Yeah.
and everything melds together.
Do you have like a window in the kiln or anything, or you just
No,
open it up?
no,
like,
because if you open it, it's like bright red, and you need your glasses on. It's not
okay.
good for you.
that's my first
And you wouldn't be
mistake.
able to see anything other than like molten red
I see.
at that time anyway.
Okay.
So
yeah, so not very helpful then.
yeah, even just cracking it, it's like up. That's
Yeah.
all you get. So it's just really hot.
So I for a little bit I used to do sourdough, and sourdough you would bake this bread and you would turn out better or worse, and you like are honing in. You kind of were already describing this. Is that a very similar feel where you're like, okay, this temperature
Yes.
for this long with
Right.
this much material in there, and then you're kind of like
Very,
dialing that
very,
back.
very much so.
Do you feel like there'll ever be a time where you're like, I got it figured out, or you think it's like always something you'll be
It causes
tweaking?
me a lot of stress, to be completely honest. Yeah, especially when you have people coming in to make things. You're like, okay, we've done this before. Everything's gonna be fine. Everything's gonna be fine. Say a little prayer.
Yeah.
and everything is fine. But man, there is a lot of stress along with it.
Yeah.
So double check your kiln program before you start it. Mom might have used a kiln, and she uses a completely different kind of glass. It doesn't take as much heat, or it takes less heat than mine. Just all those little factors. Like
Right.
just sit there with your program that you've worked out and make sure you're starting it on the right one, and then just take a deep breath because it's
Yeah.
probably going to be fine, but there's always stress.
Well, that was my next question, which you made me think of more. So we'll say for you personally, and then we'll talk about when people come and do it.
Yeah.
But obviously the fragility of glass is one of its main qualities. Do you find for your own projects, you get to a point where you're like ready to, I don't know the tools you use, but break it with the pliers or however you're doing it, or scoring it, I suppose, where you're like, I don't know if I want to do this. Like, I could ruin this piece or whatever. Is it less of a concern?
I almost always do any kind of drilling, cutting, other than grinding, all before the product is like out of the kiln.
Okay.
So if somebody's going to come in and make a house sign or something, I've already pre-drilled everything. The only thing that'll need to happen is maybe some sharp edges after it comes out of the kiln, and that doesn't bother me.
Okay.
Just when you're walking with it, your mind is on what you're holding and your steps.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Because I would hate to drop somebody's thing,
Yeah.
So
So for yourself, a little less stress, but then like you're saying, when you have people, needing something, and are you doing like commission work in this case?
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
Which I think would be fun to get more into.
Yeah.
It makes me a little nervous as well. Like I have a project for Glass Doctor I need to work on for their I'm just getting ideas together for them, but they want Northern Lights, which isn't something I'm awesome at.
Yeah.
So I'm working on different ways to do Northern Lights, but they wanted to do it in their shop door here in town.
Oh, okay.
And
like the whole door, you think?
like the whole door. And I'm like, well, I can only go
Wow.
so big, but if you can work on sections, we can do sort of a section thing. Or if you do the panels, I can do panels. So I have to stay within my kiln size.
Right.
So I gave her all the measurements, and I'm still working on
That'd be pretty
final
cool.
design. But like
You're working
I
for a
want
doctor
to make
now.
that. I want to make that first one myself and make sure that I have the kiln program. Because if we're talking bigger,
Yeah.
we're talking slower heat to it,
Right.
right? So all those little factors can't just use one of my normal kilns for something bigger. Kiln programs for something bigger.
I
I
see
have
what
to
you're
like reevaluate it and go, okay, we need to really slow this down.
It's like whatever, cooking a big steak. Like you don't want to like have it raw in the middle.
Yeah,
or
exactly.
whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
The kiln shelf or the glass, everything in there has to remain the same temperature at all times.
Yeah.
Or you shock the glass and
I
it
think with
breaks.
this whole kiln talk, I'm realizing more and more how similar this is to cooking. I feel like you're just not eating the product at the end.
Yeah,
But,
exactly, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a bit, but it's fun. And like I said, we're supposed to continue learning, and it's fun to keep learning.
Yeah.
So I'm right there in it.
So you've been doing this, like you've been around glasswork and everything pretty much your whole life, it sounds like. How
Yeah.
long have you been doing Back to Glass? Like the business
Oh,
itself?
I renamed it just a couple of years ago, or even a year and a half ago.
Oh, okay.
I think. I don't actually know when I picked the new name. I could probably go
Well,
back through
I
pictures
should
and find
say,
it.
not even just the new name then,
Yeah.
like when you started, beyond just for yourself, like bringing other people in.
I
and-
started teaching classes at Northern Whimsy,
Oh, okay.
that little gift shop down on 9th and
Yeah.
Macy, or it used to be there.
Yeah, yeah.
I would say throughout all of last year,
Oh, okay.
or at least 6 months of the year.
Mm-hmm.
And I was really nervous.
Yeah.
And Andrea over there was like, you should teach some classes. Oh, no.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I started doing it, and it was really fun, and people were really receptive. So
Awesome.
it was very different. And so I just kind of kept doing it. And then I finally just started cleaning up my studio, making it more public, and thinking I'll just teach the classes in here because I'm not having to haul everything. You could imagine hauling all that glass, and if somebody's using glass powders on something, I'm having to bring them home. And there's a lot of stress there getting these pieces
Yeah.
home.
Yeah.
One, not tripping. Two, it's like strapping a baby into the back of the car so you don't,
Right.
the
Especially in the
brake.
wintertime, people, yeah, like if we're not thinking about this, like it's snowy or whatever, and all
Right,
the little
right.
bumps while you're walking.
Yeah.
with-
And then, like I'm relatively organized, so everything had to go back in its place. So you're just it was a lot of hauling back and forth,
Yeah,
and all that.
that's
So
tough.
it's really nice being in my own location because there is so much to it. And people can just put things directly in the kiln if it's that type of
Right.
project, which I think they find really enjoyable to see sort of the whole process. Like I'll go through how I created the products they get to use, right? And what they can use, and then they make their piece and it's into the kiln, and then I'll start it when I'm ready to start it. But
So what do your classes look like? Is it like, hey, we're going to make this specific thing and you're going to follow along and like have a glass of wine? Like that seems to be a big thing in the art world. Like
Yeah, they can bring their own wine in that
Okay.
case. Yeah. I've been giving that a lot of thought. And when I first started out, I gave people more options to try and make different things. And I realized I'm running around too much in class. Like everybody's really happy, but
Yeah.
it's a little too much for me. So I did just go back to making like one item, but I always try to give some freedom in there, like either freedom of color or your shapes. You're still using the same size of glass I pre-prepared for you, but I'm always getting teased about choices. Oh, it's
really?
Carrie. There's going to be choices. Well, I can't help it. And if I don't
Yeah.
give you choices, you're going to want choices. So I'm just going to give you a lot of choices and probably overwhelm you for a few minutes.
Yeah.
And then you're going to grasp it. Don't worry. Trust me, and I'll help you.
Yeah.
So
Well, I much prefer, I always talk to my wife about this. One of my favorite restaurants, this is when I lived down south, is a burger place. And they served burgers, fries, and milkshakes. And that was it. But they were the best burgers, fries, and milkshakes that you could
Right.
get. I was like, they specialize in it. So especially when I'm learning, and we were just talking about this, the creative process, like
Yeah.
the blank page for me is the absolute worst. Because I can't, a lot of times I just cannot decide how to like get it started. So
Right.
what I've started doing, for anybody curious, is whatever it is I call it just basically throwing up. I throw up whatever I can think onto the page, and then I just start weeding things out. Like I don't worry, I put too much in there, I make it overdone or whatever. But yeah, if I want to be, come to a class or something, I would love, like having the direction of like, hey, here's where we're going. Cause then it takes this huge stress off of me.
Yeah.
Like, maybe it's not the perfect thing that I wanted to make, but it's like, hey, this is a starting point. And that's generally what it is. So do you have like open periods where people can come and do
I
what
did
they
that
want?
for a little bit, and I kind of backed out of that a little
Yeah?
because I didn't feel like it was the best use of my time. Like
I
it was hard
see.
for me to focus on anything that I really needed to finish.
I see.
And I might have just been helping one or two people like all day. So
Oh,
it wasn't
wow.
the best use. So I did stop that, tried it for a couple months.
Yeah.
But when it comes time or back to that blank page,
Yeah.
I always have like, you can, I'm pretty picky. Like I really want people to be able to make exactly what I posted for my example, right? So they can either make that almost exactly like I did, or you can use other templates. Like I always have tons of templates for people to choose from to create their design, right? Or you can go freestyle and do your own thing, which people do once they've come in a few times. I want them to learn the studio. I want them to ask me, hey, can I do this too? I know I don't need to babysit you. You've been here so many times. You go for it.
Yeah.
Which is really fun, right?
Yeah.
And it doesn't, usually there's not like an excessive cost added to what they're asking. At least they're asking, which is important, right? And if there's a lot to it, I might say no. But in general, yeah, go for it.
Yeah.
Make your piece the way you want it. you know?
Right. Absolutely.
So
is there, are your kilns up for use at all? I'm just curious, like if somebody had like a project, I don't know how they would transport it, I
people
guess.
bring me things that need fixed, that kind of thing.
Oh, okay.
And I can often fix them depending. I mean, there may be a seam still stuck in there or something, but I can repair a lot of things. So people do bring me things like that.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I learned from it too. Like what kind of glasses? First of all, can you tell me what kind of glasses it is? Where did you buy it? And I might know what they used.
Yeah.
And I'll try and fix it. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's already broke, so it's hopefully like
I'm like,
risk.
so you're okay if I can't fix this or if I ruin this, and they're usually okay. But
yeah,
I haven't ever ruined anybody's things.
Good.
So
Good.
that's
That's good to hear. Well, I was just thinking. So I would say I'm creative in different ways. I hate to bring up a competitor, but Expressions in Glass, I went and did, and this has been a few years ago with my wife, we went and did a little, basically open time, whatever. They just like showed us how to do a few techniques or whatever. And it was cool. I would have loved to have learned like had more hands on.
Yeah.
I happened to, by the way, I should have took a picture of it. You would have been so proud. But I was going on a mountain goat hunt like the next week. So I was like, I'm doing a mountain goat. And it is the greatest. I am so proud of it.
I definitely want to see it.
I'll have to text my wife to get a picture of it. I'm not sure where it's at. But, and it was my good luck charm. I did get a mountain goat on that hunt, everybody. Yeah.
Awesome.
So it was the smallest one that was legal. But so I forgot where I was going with this. Oh, no. So I'm generally not, I wouldn't say I'm like very, conventionally creative, artistic or whatever. Like I'm not like into the drawing or painting, but I love the tactile like I really like the glass. I really like doing wood, like working the wood and all that. Like something about the feeling of it, I just really enjoy.
Me too. Yep.
Yeah. It's I don't know what it is. I can't really pinpoint like that feeling, but my kids are all, my wife is like, again, she loves to paint, she loves to do all these things. So I have 3 girls and about to be a 4th. Congrats to me.
Yeah.
But they all are like so crafty. Like I was not raised in a house where we had like a bunch of paints and things like that.
Yeah.
And so now being here, I'm like, this is so crazy. And this is a long way for me to get what I'm saying, is we do these YouTube videos of people drawing whatever. And it's like step by step. And it's a dad and his daughter. And I thought it was so cool because it shows like a little bit of variety. And it just reminded me of like, you're setting this out. And then like the daughters always looks a little different. And then you look at all of my kids. And of course, they're different ages, different abilities. And they all look different. But you can tell it's the same.
Yeah.
Seed or whatever it is. But yeah, so I'm imagining that's kind of what those classes look like. I
try to always post before and after pictures of everybody's projects in class. Okay. At least the afters. Because that is the number one comment is how they always come out so different. I think anybody would say that in any of the paint classes around town and things like that too, but it's always so fascinating to see where somebody else went with their project.
Oh, I see what you mean.
But it's still the same project. It's still the same process.
Right. Right. We're doing birch trees today.
Always really interesting.
Yeah.
Like, wow, I would have never thought to do that. That looks so cool. That kind of thing,
Yeah, for sure.
So I always say too, like people do, like if somebody else had the same medium I did and all these supplies that I do.
Right.
Wow. And time, right? Like sometimes I don't always take the time to make something like wow. Just do a general idea of what I've got, then let the other people come in and do the wow when they're sitting there for a few hours and have the time.
Right.
And that's the idea too. Like I'll just create the general idea, you run with it.
Yeah.
And I don't know where I was going with that, but
doesn't matter.
Like
it was the end of the thought, I guess. No, you're good. You're good.
So but their projects always turn out like Oh, if somebody had all the same products that I did, that kind of thing. Yeah, it'd just be amazing what they would come up with, I think.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not amazing. I'm just using what I have. Like, I have a really cool product here. I have a really cool medium. So it looks neat if I did barely anything with it. It just looks really neat.
I think you're right.
But
I'm not trying to downplay what you're doing or anybody else, but like, again, and you may look at it and think, what an amateur, but like my goat thing, I think it turned out so good because I think the medium is, like, forgiving maybe the wrong word, but it's just cool looking. I was like, I can't believe
it's just cool looking.
It's just cool. It's like, this is now in
it's
glass.
Kind of fascinating.
It's all fused together, and you can't pull it apart any longer.
Right.
Like it is what it is. I
Lights
like that.
coming through. I mean, yeah.
There's all these things that, and again, like not to poo-poo on 3D printing. Let's go back to that. When it doesn't have that same magic when something's made out of plastic or whatever, as when these like old world almost feeling glassworks, woodworks, whatever it is. They just
it's a forever keeper. Like,
yes. I can't imagine getting rid of that.
And sometimes people's things will break.
Yeah.
Like I just got a text the other day that says, "Hey, my birch tree broke. The wind blew it out of the window." And it makes me think we should do more things that hang. Like sometimes I do things in stands.
Yeah.
And I always worry because that's probably more fragile than something hanging.
Mm-hmm.
And I just said, super glue works, or bring it back in and we'll fire it again with another piece of glass behind it. It'll forever have your cracked line hidden in there.
Yeah.
But hey, we can try and fix it.
Well, you've heard of that, the pottery, there's some fancy name. I think it's like a Japanese, like, technique.
Oh, yeah.
They'll fill it with gold.
With the gold.
Yes.
Yeah. Kasugi or something. I don't know.
Whatever you said, I
think it's
with.
beautiful, the idea and the look. That might be a great take on it. Maybe we should work on that. Like, bring it back in and let's do this.
We're going to fill it with gold.
Yeah.
Use that name. Like, hey, we can Kasugi it or whatever the name is. Someone's probably correcting us.
It's probably not that. Yeah, exactly.
But whatever it was before, it's better now than even like the beginning piece. So that's awesome. Well, where do you see your business going? Like, what's your forward plans for it?
Oh, I'm right in the middle of not knowing where that's going.
Yeah.
I feel like we come to these spots in life where we just kind of don't know. Mm-hmm. I'm definitely in it, like sort of in the thick of it.
Yeah, it doesn't
and
really
I'm
matter.
trying to don't look at it like a bad thing, just part of life thing, and go with the flow and try and figure it out. So,
are you very much a go with the flow person your whole life, or is this something you've learned more?
Just me learning more about myself. I think, generally wherever I am, I'm going to try and make it better. Mm-hmm. I've learned that, like whatever house I'm in or city I'm in, I'm going to want to try and like sort of envelop myself in it. Mm-hmm. And keep my environment happy and nice and inviting around me.
Yeah.
And in the studio, I like that feeling too. Like I always have snacks and drinks and music playing and the wood stove's going in the winter. Like I want it very homey and people to feel that sort of comfy feel.
That's awesome.
When they're with me, right?
Yeah.
And I want to give them all that one-on-one attention, So, and we all need that, I think. Mm-hmm. So I'm just going to keep...
What's the kiln fired with, by the way? Is it propane or...
Electric. It's electric.
Oh, really? Mm-hmm. Okay, cool.
And it doesn't run for those 12 hours. It runs for about 8. And it's a lot of cool down time.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
What's your electric bills like?
I'm not telling.
Okay. A little high.
It's not terrible. It's not terrible.
Okay.
Because it's not all working time.
Right.
And it depends on what kilns I'm running.
Well,
I have like 5 different kilns, but...
How hot are these kilns getting?
They're 1,515 degrees. The one I use primarily.
Right.
For only 4 minutes. That's my high temp. That's when there's movement.
Oh. Yeah. Okay. And so it's really not that peak very long.
No, not very long. So it works like this. If anybody cares out there how the kilns work.
We care.
There's like three buttons on the front of it. So it's like three things you're thinking of when you're setting it. And that is how fast you're heating it up per hour. Mm-hmm. So say like 200 degrees per hour from room temperature up to 500 degrees, and you're going to hold it there for like a half an hour. So you're just heating everything in the kiln to 500 degrees throughout, right? And then you can creep up some more. You can go like 400 degrees per hour until like 1,000 degrees, right? And then hold it there for another half an hour. Mm-hmm. So you're removing stress. The glass is softening a little, but not moving, and everything's continuing to stay the same temperature. And then from there, from about 1,000, you can cruise up a little faster. So like 600 degrees per hour until I get to 1,515 degrees. And then I can hold it there for that 4 minutes. So that's when I know things are moving. And that took time to learn exactly 1,515 degrees. Like, okay, that's our golden temperature for what we're making. Mm-hmm. And I only need 4 minutes. If I do 5 minutes, I might have like little pokey edges sticking out because it pulled in a little bit too much and it melted a little too much here. So it's a very fine line for like how many minutes.
Yeah.
Or bring that temperature down, So, and then you got to cool it down, and you can come down really quickly to, like, in my case, about 1,050 degrees for window glass, for all the molecules to come back together into a glass-like state. So, and window glass too is very finicky. Like it likes to get this film on it. Everybody that comes to my class learns about this film that gets on it. Like you need to keep fingerprints and the glue kind of separate.
Oh.
So keep your hands clean, use your tweezers, because the grease from your fingers and the glue that we're using can create like a watermark stain on your glass. And I do spray everything before it goes in the kiln with like a boric acid type spray, which helps it all stay shiny in the end, which we all love.
Yeah.
So there's a few key things when you're building something in the studio that you learn, and then everything comes out looking fantastic.
Yeah.
But it is finicky. It's not as friendly as the normal fusible glass out there.
So, and I'm thinking of your mom now. So your mom does something very different from what you're doing?
Just a different kind of glass.
Just a different kind of glass. Okay.
Yeah.
So you guys can...
And hers is very friendly.
Oh, really? Why aren't you doing the friendlies?
I don't know. There's a lot more to learn in it, but it just didn't seem as interesting. So, I don't know. As soon as I learned that you could put enamel powders on window glass and it would fire, I thought that was great. And I'm like, cool. I can't think of when I started working with window glass exactly, other than I remember having enamels. And then I must have trampled upon the glass powders and the frit in Washington that I buy now.
Right.
Because I remember making these United States flags and crushing the glass and fusing it to it. So just a clear piece of glass, like cut like a shield in this case. And then putting these crushed pieces of clear on here going, oh my gosh, this is just cool. First of all, we're just creating texture on clear, nothing, right? And then adding some color to it. And even just textured pieces with little chunks like that look awesome by themselves. Like just glass in general is cool by itself. But boy, if you just add texture and other pieces, it just changes it. But no color even looks amazing.
Gotcha.
But I think somewhere in the beginning there, that's when I started playing with it. And I was like, oh, we're not going back. This is really fun. You can keep playing with yours. I know there's tons of pictures and tons of information out there. It's been going on forever. But this is really kind of interesting and different and unique. And I tend to like some of those things that are different. So the outcomes are
very different because of the different glass.
Yeah, if you look at the two, and you can definitely see like, oh, this is full color. Mine is not full color. There's definitely a clear element to it.
Okay.
So
gotcha. So back to where the business is going. So you're you're just settling into where it's going to take you. Is that?
Yeah, I'm just gonna stick with. Okay, one, try not to be too busy. Right? I still got to take care of like mom's house and my house and the family. And I still have an 11-year-old. The other two are older.
Yeah.
And I really want to do things with him and have him busy and learning.
Yeah.
So I don't want to be too busy and not be able to do that. And so I'm just going to keep doing workshops and preparing for those ahead of time. So I'm not feeling the stress to get ready.
Yeah.
And it's all about not feeling the stress a lot. As I do get stressed, right? And then, keep learning, like get ready for these. And then like, okay, cool. We took this month to get ready. Now let's work on this month to learn something new. Not just something little, like let's go a little bigger. Yeah. Let's blow something up. Let's do something cool. Right.
Yeah.
So I'd like to do a little more of that because that's really exciting.
Yeah.
And I am literally just teaching myself.
Right.
So
and you have to.
I got to push myself out of the box a little, and I haven't done that yet. And I would really like to start doing that.
Well, a really cool mindset that I was reading Elon Musk's biography, and however you feel about the guy, he's an interesting fellow, but one of his things, he's literally making rockets, and his whole idea is like push things until they break, because if you haven't pushed it till they break, you don't know how far it is until it will break, kind of deal. So, and again, he's launching rockets that are exploding in the sky, so you may be like, oh, maybe you should have not done that. But it's like, we know now we need this thing added back in that we thought we only needed 3 of those bolts, we need 6 or whatever it is, kind of deal. But you never know, like, what the possibility is if you don't get it to that breaking point where you're going to have some issues. And again, you're not shooting rockets in the sky, so you know. How bad could it be?
Not too bad. I will say, this is not going big, but I'm firing stuff right now in the kiln that's burning off carbons.
Oh, okay.
And it is real stinky. Like,
oh, okay.
Mom is out of the house. The cats are there.
Yeah.
And the doors are open and the fans are going, because that's just one of those things you have to do to certain materials to be able to use them. But if I don't do that, I can't move on to something bigger. Yeah. Like I've been avoiding it in the winter, and like I really want to try this and this, but in the winter, it affects things, like what you want to do in that case. So yeah, I'm firing that now so we can go a little bigger, because I definitely don't push the envelope on things, and I would like to start doing a little more of that.
I don't even know what that means when you say you're burning off the
glue, marker, fiber paper, they all have like bonding agents in them, and they have to burn out at around 1,000 degrees.
I see.
And they they are really, really stinky. Probably not just stinky, but unhealthy.
Yeah.
So hence the fans like hung on the ceiling, running out the door, because it's going to rise.
Okay.
So I stuck a piece of Duraboard in there, this big, like half-inch thick piece of sort of like an insulation board that you can use to create texture. And I'm actually using it as a portable device to put more texture into the kiln.
Okay.
But it had to burn off like 600 degrees per hour up to 1200 degrees.
I see.
To
Like
burn out those carbons for the
thing?
first use of this board. And I have 2 of them, and you have to fire them twice.
Oh, man.
One upside down and right side up, like when you use them.
Yeah.
And I fired it last night, and I was like, okay, Mom, we got to go. Like, we're leaving. Everything's open. I'm taking you out. We need to go.
Oh, man. We did. I won't say the same because I don't think the idea is the same, but very similar. When you get a new wood stove, you got to burn off like whatever coating they put on there.
Right.
And I got a new wood stove, and I think someone told me at some point, and I just forgot.
Yeah.
And so we started up for the first time, and I was like, we got to get out of here.
Burning off all the paint and
I know.
whatever.
My wife's like, is our house burning down? And I'm like, I don't think so. I think this is normal. I just now remembered now that I'm smelling it in the house. So luckily it was not like dead winter. We could open windows and stuff. But
yes.
Yeah.
That's how I felt now. It's like, do it now so we can play a little more later.
Yeah. So you talked a little bit about forms and textures, like making a bowl. What I'm visualizing is this thing laying down over something. How do you keep it from like puddling at the bottom or
your program itself?
Okay.
If you run it too hot or hold it too long, it is going to drip and pool. And sometimes people want that effect depending on what you're trying to make. But
right. Be pretty thin at the bottom.
Be pretty thin and probably pull apart.
Yeah.
Glass in general, like physically physics wise, wants to become a 1/4 inch thick. So it would continue to pool and drip off this mound if you were doing that into a 1/4 inch like sheet of glass on the.
Why 1/4 inch?
I don't know why. Just physics wise, Like if you put a tiny piece of glass in, it's going to want to ball up until it's about a 1/4 inch high.
Really?
Yeah. And then if you put in like a bigger sheet, say 3 layers of glass high, so maybe it's like 3/4 of an inch, it's going to spread out until it's about 1/4
So
inch.
this is things, not even just the forms we're talking about, but just even when you're doing
just
flat
in general,
pieces.
even flat. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're programming, so because this thing's, if you did it wrong, it would spread out.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
With all those layers.
So I would like to
get
start
deformed.
making awards and things like that around town, like glass awards.
Yeah.
And I still want to play with that some more and making them thicker with texture and words from underneath, creating impressions behind, which I think would be really fun. But in that case, you're talking like, I want freestanding possibly too. So maybe like 1.5 inches thick. And you have to bank those things in. You have to put like bricks and other materials that the glass doesn't stick to keep it from flowing.
I gotcha.
Right. But still lets it all melt together and all the bubbles come up because there's air trapped in there.
Yeah.
And then melt around whatever pattern.
That 1/4 inch thing is super interesting to me.
It's very
'Cause
interesting.
You would think it would be like if you had enough space, it would just keep getting thinner and thinner, but it just
and
stops.
it does not. Yep.
Yeah. Wild.
And you use that to your benefit, knowing that as you're making things, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. So even, so all the programming is, I don't know. I really like this part because it's like this recipe you've got going on for what you're doing.
Yeah.
So is to keep these things from getting deformed past where they're looking good, obviously. But have you ever pushed the limits on that end to kind of see what happens?
Oh, accidentally.
Yeah.
I mean, yes and no.
Yeah.
Like while you're setting up a program, I've pushed it a little too far and melted things and like, well, that's trash.
Right. Right.
Or it goes in the fish tank sometimes.
Yeah.
And then we have this little kiln. We used to have 2 of them and they didn't have a programmer on them. So you just set your watch or your timer every 10 minutes. You'd go back and check and you could change how fast it's heating up or how slow. But if you didn't set your timer and you meant to, and then you've got like a 2,000 degree kiln and glass is pooling outside the edges of it. So,
right. Yeah.
a hard lesson to learn.
Yeah.
And we ruined 1 kiln.
I was going to ask, what was the cleanup? So it just was.
We did that a few times before you really learned the lesson. Just not so bad and not so bad. Like, okay, it's shot. You know? And that kind of kiln wasn't something you could repair. Like it didn't have a coil in it that you could just go buy a replacement coil. Yeah. It was sort of in like this material, like built into it. So I ended up like, saving it for parts and it came in handy. We used it for parts on the other one, but most of our kilns have programmers on them now. Yeah. Except for just one left for making quick little things.
Yeah. So one you have to go manually change every. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
But it's just just for doing quick little things.
Right.
You could throw together a Christmas necklace in a heartbeat and like in the morning and be like, I have a cold necklace to put on my little hook in the evening.
Well, what does quick mean for you? Like a few hours or is it still like 5-6 hours?
It's still 5-6 hours.
Okay.
But if you started in the morning, you could have something.
If it
was small, it would cool in 5-6 hours. If it's bigger, it's still going to take the majority of the day, if not longer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you do some commission work.
Yeah.
You do classes. Do you sell the art pieces too? Do you have like a gallery or like what is
I
that?
just have a super unorganized little shelf in my studio right now. I need to work on that. And I thought I would maybe start doing some more bulk things and doing like First Fridays.
Yeah.
And getting a little bit more known. Ultimately, just to do more commissions, private parties, and workshops at this point. I like doing the private parties. That's kind of fun, like business team building things.
Yeah.
And they just talk to me and, hey, we want to build this. And everybody wants to build one of their own, this size, whatever it is.
That's the way to go.
But I do sell things at Northern Whimsy. And Fox, there's a few of my fish hanging in Fox, and there's a few things in Anchorage and a few things in Denali. So a little bit like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So, but not super well known or anything.
You're getting there.
Yeah.
You're on the big
baby
time now.
steps.
Yeah.
If I was inundated, I would just feel inundated, right? Like it'd be too much. So the fact that I'm growing slowly is probably good for me.
Yeah. Yeah. That's wonderful. And you're having fun doing it.
I'm having fun doing it.
That's kind of the important bit.
Yeah. And it's fun making everybody happy when they come in.
Yes.
I would say that's the biggest joy.
I was going to say, like, it could not be very often you have an unhappy client or something. Like, it seems like it's, again, a pretty low risk thing as well. Like, they're not in there trying to make like a $5,000 piece of art or something.
They all seem really like not super, super high expectations. I had one come in and she's like, oh, I have low expectations. I'm like, well, I have really high expectations. I want everybody's pieces to look amazing. Right. I feel like they pretty much always look amazing when they leave.
Right.
And there's that fine line when you're teaching too, to not be like, oh, I wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
To, oh, but they might really like that, you know? So you just like, just so you know, that's going to melt like this, just in case you're looking for this, and that's like the easiest way to correct
That's
them.
an interesting point. I remember when I sold my first ugly house, and I was like, I don't guess I'm the one to decide what ugly is.
That's right.
It's like everybody, and I think they thought it was ugly too, but they were willing to do the fixing and stuff.
Yeah.
But
that's funny.
Something I did want to bring up, speaking of ugly houses, is you talked about improving wherever you're at, always looking to improve. And that is unbelievably important. I don't think people realize how much, because, and I always think of my grandpa who's passed now, and I love him, and I'm not speaking illy of him. He would agree with this as well. He was like the worst maintenance guy ever. He loved building. He was like a creator extraordinaire. He loved construction. He loved doing that. He wasn't much of a finisher, but unless he was like getting paid to do it, like he was excellent. Everybody loved him, all that stuff. But then he had all this stuff near the end of his life that was just like degrading. It could be old age as well. Yeah. But it was always kind of throughout his life that thing. So not like if you build something, like it does not just stay that way. It degrades over time. And it's the same with communities in general. And like a big part of this podcast is about the community and how we grow and stuff. And if everybody made whatever was under your purview a little bit better, or just even maintained the condition of it, like the whole community, it's all these singular people making a cool business, making your house. You know, it seems really personal. It's like, well, someday you're probably going to sell that house. You know, at some point it's going to happen, whether it's 40 years from now or whatever, and it gets sold in an estate. It makes it way easier when your house is not having to be sold for $50,000 because it's in such disrepair or something. Right. So if everybody was pushing for that, and there's a lot of people that are, and there's other people that aren't, you know, but if you just look at your life, it's the whole like make your own bed kind of thing. Like, what are the little things? It's not like you don't have to fix up the whole city. You don't have to tear down the rundown hotel in downtown.
Well, what do you want to surround yourself with too?
Exactly.
Like we want to, well, some people want to live in a community that's like clean and inviting. Yeah. Right. And then those are the ones that take care of things. Yeah. Not just for themselves, but for the community.
Right. And I think most people do. Like if you look at most houses, and I'm just talking houses because that's what I'm looking at all day. Yeah. They're generally good. Like, but there's a lot of things, and nobody can be perfect. Your house, like if we get an inspector in your house, my house, whatever, there's going to be items they find. Yeah. Like that's always the case. So the goal is really not perfection, but it's like, hey, I know these things are negatives and they're going to degrade further. Right. Like what can I do to push these up little by little? And there's really no hurry for it either. Right. Because if you're going in the right direction, if you want to go fast, hunky dory. Yeah. But if you're going in the right direction, that's all that really matters, you know, throughout your whole life, because you can make a huge difference where, you know, again, sorry to keep talking about houses, but let's say you fix up your own house and you move and you fix up another house. And this is what I do naturally, and it's great. It's like, all right, so in this community, I've fixed up 3 houses and I hope they're still in good repair. And is that a huge deal? It's like, nah, but they were worse than when I first found them. Yeah. You know, and it makes me feel kind of proud, I guess you could say. So anyways, it's wonderful that you do that. Sense of pride. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's what it is. Mm-hmm. So. All right. Well, is there anything else you think we should cover? Did I miss anything or questions I should ask? I don't know. I feel like we covered everything. Good. You know? It was awesome having
This
you
was
on
fun.
here.
Thanks.
Yeah. I'm glad you liked it. Most people say that. I don't know if they're lying. They're like, all right, this turned out pretty good.
No, it was good. I was nervous, but no, it was really fun.
It's super relaxed. Any guests that are coming on, which we're going to have from Northern Whimsy, Andrea, right?
Right.
Yeah, so she should be on. So that was a little sneak peek.
Cool.
I think in a few months we're a little bit out from that, but that's it. Thank you so much for coming on. It was a blast.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Yes.
Yeah,
Bye.
appreciate it.
Hey there. Thank you so much for listening. If you want more content from AK Blake, you can find me on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram, all under the handles AK Blake. Or if you want to listen to more podcasts, anywhere you get your podcasts, it's there, Fairbanks year-round. You may or may not know, I am a local real estate agent here in Fairbanks with the Summit Realty Group. So if you like what I'm doing and you want to move to the area, you already live in the area, or you're looking to invest further into real estate in the area, you can reach me. Probably the best will be either my website, akblake.com, my email, blake@akblake.com, or my phone number is probably the fastest, 907-651-8356. You can call or text. Thank you so much, and I'll see you on the next one.